On today's Newsmakers, a miracle, Bryce Crawford, and a powerful new documentary. That and more coming up. Welcome to Newsmakers, a show where we go behind the headlines each and every week to bring you interviews with pastors, entertainers, politicians, and other notable figures. First up on today's show, author Camey Joy believes angels literally saved her life. Let's welcome her here to Newsmakers to break it all down. Well, I so appreciate you taking the time and joining me today. You have an amazing new book, Beautifully Scarred, and there's so much to break down in your incredible story. But let's start with the book. What made you want to tell your story in this format?
Well, Billy, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here and share my story. So the reason I wrote the story is because I had basically like a vision of my story being played out on a movie, and I could hear myself narrating. And that's when I started writing the book. But it was in writing that I realized that we all carry scars, both some physically, but emotionally and even spiritually. And I want for people to know that your scars are worthy of the Lord's grace.
I love that. I mean, everybody has a story and everybody has something they've dealt with, they've struggled with, and everybody's struggles are different. Some people's are harder and heavier and more difficult than others, but we all have something. And your story really begins in the mountains of Guatemala, and it's really an incredible journey. Let's just start there. Tell us about your childhood and the beginnings of that story and how this all kicked off for you.
Yeah. So I was born in the mountains of Guatemala, and I was born with a severe bilateral cleft lip and cleft palate. That's where you're born without a lip, and in the roof of your mouth, you have a hole. Because of this, I was unable to eat and unable to nurse. And so my biological parents, Rita and Jesus, they tried desperately for 3 days to keep me alive. They would take breast milk, put it on rags, and just squeeze it, drip it into my mouth. But with no success, Jesus wrapped me up in a blanket, and he walked down a mountain to the hospital in Guatemala City. Once we arrived, the doctor there took one look at me and said, I'm sorry, sir, but you don't have enough money, and even if you did, we wouldn't even know how to do the surgery. So he basically kicked him out and said she's gonna die. Jesus walked out on the stairs of the hospital, and he began to cry over my life. And 2 men, seemingly out of nowhere, came up and just said, excuse me, sir, why are you crying? And Jesus couldn't even speak, but he took the blanket from my mouth, and they saw the deformity. And the 2 men said, there is hope. And the 2 men led Jesus and I to an orphanage, and along the way, the 2 men gave Jesus some money and clothing. Once we arrived at the orphanage, the lady, Angie, who owned it, welcomed me in, but when Jesus went to thank the 2 men, they were nowhere to be found. And in fact, Angie said no one was with you when she came. And so I believe that was a divine intervention over my life.
Do you believe those were angels?
I do. I really, truly do.
So these 2 men come out of nowhere while your father is crying out over you, and then take the 2 of you to this orphanage. And when he comes to talk to them, I'm just recapping this because it's wild, they're gone. And the woman who runs the orphanage is said to him, there was no one with you.
Yeah, that's correct.
Wow. Okay, there's so much to unpack here, but what does that do for your faith today when you hear that part of your story, that detail of, because I know there's so much more, obviously, once you get to the orphanage, but what does that do for your heart and your mind?
What a great question. You know, the enemy comes to kill, steal, and destroy. And the enemy wanted to take me out. But I love how it says in Psalms 139 verses 13 through 18 that he knit me together in my mother's womb, that God knew my story even before my story began. And he had a divine intervention. So I just love how what the enemy meant for evil, God turned it around and had provision.
Yeah, I mean, God had provision. What message do you hope people take away from Beautifully Scarred?
Yeah, my goal is ultimately that as I walk through each door that the Lord will open, that it's all to him, to his glory. And that I want for people to know that you may not have a physical scar, but we do have wounds of our heart, and that our scars are worthy of the Lord's grace, and that no one is too far gone, that there is beauty in the ashes.
I love that. There is beauty in the ashes, and it can be hard in the moments, the difficult moments, to remember that, while you're going through it. But, you've been through a lot of those moments and you're on the other side of that now. The book is Beautifully Scarred. I so appreciate you taking the time today.
Oh, thank you, Billy, for having me. I'm excited to see what the Lord has in store.
You can get Camey Joy's book, Beautifully Scarred, wherever books are sold. We'll be right back in just a moment with more Newsmakers. Welcome back to Newsmakers. Next up, online evangelist Bryce Crawford shares how a radical encounter with Jesus literally saved his life. Now he's inspiring millions across the country. Let's welcome him here to share his story. All right, so I want to start with your viral videos. When you first started making content, did you have any idea it was going to blow up the way that it has?
Not any idea. I just knew I was going after the lost, and the only explanation I had was just the grace of God on it, on the videos, on the ministry. And we were just moving off of a mission and a burning desire to see people know Jesus.
The call to make the videos, like, how did you feel that? Where did that come from?
I had a dream at night in May of 2023. In the dream, in real life, I was wrestling with what's my thing for you, God? God, what am I doing? And one night I had a dream. In the dream, Lauren Cunningham, founder of YWAM Youth with a Mission, he's been to every country and continent on the planet. They even fundraised money for him just to step foot on Antarctica, to say he went to Antarctica. He's been literally everywhere. In this dream, God uses him to speak to me and tells me to stay in America, to stay in my own backyard. And so I woke up from this dream profusely crying. And it was in that dream God revealed to me to record these conversations that we were already having with people, just to encourage believers to be bold for their faith. And it was from the very first video that we posted that God used it and has continued to use it. And it's been nothing short of a miracle.
Okay. Nothing short of a miracle. So that dream, a lot of people I've been talking to lately, they've been having dreams. They've had them consistently throughout their life. Was that the first dream that you had that you felt was more than just a random dream?
No, I've had dreams in the past. I'm not a big dreamer. I wish I could say every night I go to sleep and I dream about donuts and coffee. And
that sounds great.
It sounds amazing. I unfortunately do not get that luxury, but when I do dream, oftentimes, if not every time, it's God speaking to me something along the lines of protection or vision or prophecy or through about people. And so I always try to be very careful and listen and remember.
And it gives you confirmation. It's a form, for those who don't experience it, of proof, I think, of God.
Absolutely.
Is it not?
Absolutely. He uses dreams. God loves dreams. He's been speaking through dreams for thousands of years. And so I think the least we can do is maybe pay a little bit more attention sometimes.
Well, and you did. Mm-hmm. And here we are.
Here we are.
I mean, if you ever think about what would have happened if you didn't listen to that dream?
I'd probably be doing a job that God did not call me to, and miserable and being outside of God's will for my life. I think that's what would have happened.
Would not be a great place to be.
No, not a great place. So I'm very grateful for saying yes.
So let's just backtrack a little bit too. For those who don't know, and I know a lot of people do, but your journey into faith, talk about that. What was it that made the switch go off for you?
Well, I grew up in a Christian home. I went to a private Christian school. I got a great education at school, but I was surrounded by a lot of hypocrisy. There was a lot of people that would tell me how to live my life, and then they would do the total opposite. A lot of people around me, or that could speak into my life from a school standpoint, from an authority standpoint, who claimed to Jesus with their mouth, but their actions were far from it. So I just had this bitterness towards God. It's not fair to do God that way, but I did, and just like most people do. And then I had depression and anxiety for years. And when I was 17, I planned on taking my life because I thought it was the only way to get the pain to go away. And that night I had a supernatural encounter with Jesus where, God revealed to me, maybe the reason I don't know that he loves me is because I haven't given myself a chance to love him back. You know, he's loved every human being unconditionally on the cross, definition of love. And, you know, it's like us getting to know each other. We'd spend time together and hang out and eat meals. And through that, we would grow and know that we both love each other. And in the same way, he was in hot pursuit of me and I was slapping him in the face. And so I prayed this radical prayer. I said, Jesus, if you're real, take away my anxiety and depression, because this is why I want to take my life. And I haven't had the crippling anxiety or depression since that day.
It went away like that.
It'll be 5 years on the 25th of December.
When you got that relief from him immediately, what went through your heart and your mind?
Wow, this is what I've been searching for.
And it's so crazy to me too, because your whole life, you were brought up in the church, you know, you were brought up around it, right? So you had all of this information that had been poured into you, but yet there was a spiritual battle. There was, you know, something going on there, a stronghold maybe, right?
Yeah.
That was broken in that moment. And now you're on this mission where you're going out to other people. So when you pick a person to talk to, or when God picks a person for you to talk to, what is that process? What does that look like?
Anyone that breathes oxygen, that's the process. Anyone that breathes oxygen can know Jesus. But yeah, we ask Holy Spirit as well. Holy Spirit highlights someone, but really my target is what society would label the most lost, the most confused, the darkest person. That person that society would label, that's my guy. That's my guy. Because how are people going to treat that person if they have that prejudice about them? Probably with bitterness, probably with partiality, probably with reservation. And I don't want to do that. I want to do the total opposite of that. And so that I mean, yes, that's really my main crowd. But anyone that breathes oxygen, you know, if you step in my personal space, I think you're going to get nothing but Jesus.
Okay, so I want to go back to the depression, because I think this is so important. There's so many people right now. We have cell phones, we have social media. We're more connected than ever. And yet we're more depressed as a society. We're more suicidal as a society. With all these tools, it doesn't quite make sense. You were there. You were in the midst of it. What would you say to somebody right now who is watching or listening to this, who that's where they are? They're in that place. They maybe they want to take their own life because they are at the end of their road. What would you say to them?
Well, I mean, I got to the end of my road in sin, not because I wanted to keep sinning, but because I thought it was familiar. I knew it would be there. And I think if we're honest with ourselves, that's where most people are in their journey with worldview, belief. Jesus is they're at their wit's end. They do things they do because it's familiar. And my thing would be, if you already hate your life, give it to someone who wants it. Jesus has made the evidence. He wants your life. He wants your heart. And if you hate your life, just give it to someone who wants it. And I believe that's Jesus. And that would be my encouragement to anyone watching or listening.
Give it to somebody who wants it. That's actually a really powerful word. Like, people might not realize that or think about that there's a God who loves them, who actually wants that life.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So you are obviously traveling the country. You've got this tour. You've got a podcast. You have a lot going on.
Yeah.
You're making these videos. What have you learned most about yourself? Then we'll talk about God. Most about yourself as you've been navigating conversations with other people.
Oh man, when I don't listen, it goes south. That's what I've learned. When I go into a conversation thinking, oh man, the thing I'm about to say is really going to win them to the Lord. Whatever this phrase, this idea, the way I've got this in my brain, I've lost. And that's when I tend not to listen. And so I found that listening has been my greatest tool, anyone's greatest tool in evangelism. You know, the ministry of presence, being there, listening, seeing people, loving them.
I love it. Well, thank you so much. Appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
You can go to JesusOnTheStreet.org for more on Bryce Crawford, and we'll be right back in just a moment with more Newsmakers. Welcome back to Newsmakers on the CBN News Channel. For our final segment, filmmaker Michael Ray Lewis is out with a new movie. It's called Universe Designed, and it's a film that offers evidence for God. Let's welcome the former atheist here to break it all down. Belief in God. We are experiencing a very fascinating resurgence in belief among Gen Z and millennials today. And you have created this film, Universe Designed, and you went from an atheist who didn't want to believe to somebody now who not only believes, but you've created a project intent on helping people understand the design of the universe that comes from God. What was it that led you to this film?
So I was already kind of in the film industry. I actually worked on a lot of horror films, believe it or not, especially as an atheist. I mean, that was what I was obsessed with. And so I was already in the film industry, but I was mostly doing projects as like a DP, which is the guy behind the camera, and editors for the projects. And I had already been wanting to create a feature film, like to do it as a director. And I couldn't, especially after giving my life to Christ, I was like, well, I probably shouldn't do horror films anymore. And I was like, I really want to do something for the kingdom, because like all these films that I've been working on, they have no substance to them. There's to me and in my mind, there were no benefit to the films I was doing. And so I talked to my wife and I said, well, I don't necessarily want to do a Christian film because I don't like any of the Christian films that have been coming out. And it was actually her suggestion that she recommended to me, that she said, why don't you create a documentary on the evidence that compelled you that it was true? And so I said, all right, that's what I'm going to do. At first, I was going to do just find a bunch of people who maybe used to be atheist and get their testimonies. And she said, no, why don't you just email the people you read books on? And so I started sending out emails, and one by one, they started responding and saying yes. So I bought plane tickets, got on a plane, flew out there, and started basically just asking them all the hard questions I had as an atheist, because I didn't really have a story in mind during this time. I knew that I wanted to present a case for the existence of God, but I wasn't sure how I was going to structure it. So I just started collecting as much content as I could. I ended up with 36 hours of interview content that I ended up having to condense into an hour and 25-minute film, have it make sense, have it tell a story, but not be too information heavy to lose people. And I hope that that's what I've done.
Wow. So, okay. When you look at this film and the end result of Universe Designed, how did it, first of all, impact your faith? Because you obviously went into this now wanting to explore this as somebody who understands who God is. Mm-hmm. Did it build your faith up more as you were looking at the evidence? Just what did it do for your heart and your mind? Well,
honestly, I mean, I was pretty convinced that day that I gave my life to Christ, because at this point I had been studying it for 3 years, and I was absolutely convinced. And it's kind of interesting because that moment in the car, I almost went from a state of believing that it's true to knowing that it's true. And looking back at it, the only thing I can attribute that to is like the inner witness of the Holy Spirit that kind of affirmed to me that it was actually true. And at that point, I just became excited and I wanted to share it with everyone, because I was like, this is actually true. People need to know this. People need to know this information. But I was extremely shy. I wasn't comfortable having conversations with people. I was afraid that I was going to say something wrong or would come out wrong. But there was one particular moment in my life where that shifted. My dad actually gave me a call, and he said that my grandmother was passing away in the hospital. And I remember I showed up and all my family's there. And keep in mind, I had never heard my family talk about God. I mean, I'm pretty sure we had a Bible under the bed, but we never talked about Jesus, never talked about God, never went to church. And it wasn't really a topic in my family. And when I showed up and my grandmother was there, she was still kind of coherent. And I didn't know what she believed. And I remember thinking to myself, I need to have a conversation with her. I need to sit down and share Jesus with her. But I couldn't. I was too nervous. I didn't know what to say. Plus, my family was there. I didn't know how they would respond. And she ended up passing away in that hospital, and I never shared the gospel with her, never had a conversation with her. And that moment impacted me. I remember going out to the car and just crying. And I made a commitment that no matter what, from that moment on, I would not hesitate. I would share Jesus with anyone and everyone I come in contact with. And since then, I have learned to have conversations with people. I've started reading books on how to have the conversations with people, like Tactics from Greg Koukl is a great one. And then I realized 90% of the Christians that I was talking to didn't know how to defend their faith. They didn't even know what apologetics was, that there was an entire field of people giving reasons for why we believe that this is actually true. And that's what I realized why a lot of people are not out there sharing Jesus with others, because they're afraid they're going to get asked a question they don't know. They're afraid it's going to get comfortable. And so the drive behind making this film was the hopes that this would encourage people to know that what we believe is actually true, and hopefully challenge you to want to share it with others. And the hope is that this will be that resource that you could share with someone. Maybe you don't have all the answers, but you could share this with them and have great conversations afterward. And I've even created a resource page on my website where you can go, and once you watch the film, I have all of the ministries of all of the apologists and scholars that are in the film. And the hope is that this will pique your curiosity, put that stone in your shoe, and then challenge you to go and do more research and prepare and equip yourself. And of course, hopefully it'll put a stone in the shoes of non-believers and get them to take a second look at Christianity and realize it's worth thinking about.
I love that. And, thank you for sharing that about your grandmother too. This is a very common experience. A lot of people struggle to share. And here you are, you've given people this resource, Universe Designed, where they get a chance to see and experience and view these arguments that people have for God and for design. Where can people go if they want to watch this film right now?
So you can go directly to my website, universedesign.com, and I provided links. But it's also available on Amazon, Google Play, Apple TV, YouTube. Shortly, it will be available on Fandango as well. We're just waiting on them to post that. But all the major streaming platforms where you can rent or purchase films, it will be available there.
Excellent. Well, Michael, I so appreciate you taking the time, joining us, and for working on this incredible project.
Thank you so much for having me.
Go to universedesign.com for more on the film, and we'll be right back in just a moment with more Newsmakers. That's all for Newsmakers. Thank you for watching, and be sure to head on over to the CBN News YouTube channel. That's where you'll find the full interviews you saw on today's episode. You can also check out our new documentary, Investigating the Supernatural Miracles. We traveled across America documenting some of the most incredible miracle stories. We have a follow-up film coming out in March, on March 16th, called Investigating the Supernatural Angels and Demons. Stay tuned for that one. And as for this show, we'll see you back here again next week.